Men and women, what is your most embarrassing, you weren't supposed to see that story? Story 1. We have a single-person bathroom in my office. Last week, I started earlier on Monday than I ever had before. I took my morning shit and couldn't flush it because the pipes were frozen. Apparently, this is common on Monday mornings, and you're supposed to do a test flush. I had to ask my manager for his space heater, which took an hour to thaw the pipes enough for me to finally dispose of my shame. Story 2. This guy I was seeing invited me to his place for dinner. I was really into him, and we had been dating for about a month when things were really starting to ramp up. He told me he had to switch his laundry across the parking lot before making dinner. I said cool, I'd go with him so we could talk some more. He switched his laundry, and as we were walking back with his baskets, a sudden wave of lightheadedness hit me, and the urge to vomit came out of nowhere. Since we were still in the early stages of getting to know each other, I thought trying to save myself from the embarrassment of puking in front of him was a good idea. I swallowed and tried to hold it back. Instead, I immediately choked on my own vomit, passed out from lack of oxygen, fell face first in the parking lot, had a seizure, and chipped my front tooth. Story 3. Granted, this isn't a C story, but a hear one, close enough. To begin, we have to go back to yesterday and what I ate. For breakfast, it was the usual cereal and coffee. But for lunch, I made chili. Hot bean chili. And that's where this tale truly begins. It was so good I ate 4 bowls of it. Later, I went to a friend's place, and they had made white chicken chili, spicy as hell. My lucky day, I love chili. So I ate 3 bowls of that too. No regrets. For drinks, I had peach mango beer, which honestly wasn't bad. Anyway, I went home and went to bed. The next morning, my bowels didn't wake up until I was already at work. I work at a college, and the bathrooms are always busy. I had to duck into the unisex bathroom because it was go time and it was the closest. My stomach had started making these concerning sounds, like a cat coming back to life after being dead. Horrible sounds. And as a man, it felt weird too, like some large parasite was twisting around in my stomach. I actually felt sympathy for pregnant women. So there I was, in the unisex bathroom, trying to get things moving. Nothing. I felt the pressure, the primal urge to bear down and unleash the great turd lord, but nothing was happening. No tusk-sized turd was making its grand entrance. I tried everything, spreading my cheeks wide for airflow in hopes of some reverse suction, even sitting up straight and swaying side to side like I was in a trance, trying to dislodge the stubborn nuggets. Nothing. This went on for what felt like forever, maybe a minute, when suddenly I heard faint girlish laughter and the door opening. In came a group of girls, 3 or 4, judging by the giggles. They saw my feet under the stall and didn't care. One even went into the stall next to me. I thought it best to stay silent. But then came the lurch. The lurch we all know, the one that says it doesn't matter who's watching, who's listening, whether it's God, the devil, or any deity. It was the screw you, bud, we're doing this lurch. YOLO. And that was the last time I heard those girls laugh. I hope someday they learn to laugh again. My sphincter surrendered. All I could say was, oh God, and hold on. The first sound was a high-pitched whistle, like a bottle rocket, but instead of a pop at the end, it was the call of demons summoning the apocalypse. A full-blown brass and drum section exploded out of me in chaotic disharmony. The shitlord had arrived. His arrival was met by a horrified voice. Oh my fucking God, did he die? Then silence. Then came the smell. Oily, clinging, deathly. The kind of stench that feels like it crawls across the floor and climbs the walls. Like every roadkill of the week had crawled inside me and died. Like your grandmother's compost bucket had come to life. I heard the girls gagging, one vomiting, the others crying and trying to help her. I couldn't even apologize. Round 2 was starting. We've all had those shits where your poor starfish stretches so wide it hurts, like you're giving birth to an arm. Hard as a rock. This was like giving birth to a leg and torso, drenched in oil and lava. It clawed its way out, burning me alive, and landed with an audible kerchunk. In the silence, it was deafening. Then came the gassy, boiling tsunami, accompanied by its own orchestra. I sat there whimpering, ow, 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 as my poor asshole was violated. Finally, with a gurgle, it ended. I felt lighter, but mentally I was broken. My ass hurt like hell, and I still had a full day ahead of me. I didn't hear the girls anymore. Guess they'd fled. But then I noticed something. the small side of a pink and white shoe with a fuzzy sock peeking out from the stall next to me. I had forgotten my poor stallmate. She hadn't made a sound. Not a peep. I didn't even know if she was alive. When I finally looked down, I saw my handiwork. A monstrous turd coiled around the bowl like a smug python, with smaller turdlets floating nearby. It took 3 flushes to send that thing to Tartarus. After an ungodly amount of paperwork, toilet paper, that is, and more flushing, I realized I couldn't smell anything anymore. My nose had just given up. Still, my stallmate remained silent. I muttered a heartfelt, "I'm so sorry," and went to wash my hands. As I finished, I heard a flush, and she emerged. She was gorgeous, like seeing the sun for the first time after a lifetime of darkness. The kind of beauty that would break necks from double takes. She kept her eyes on the floor as she washed her hands, then glanced up and said softly, "It's okay. I think I was abandoned by my so-called friends. They left me." She shuffled to the door. But just as she reached it, she turned, looked me dead in the eye, cocked her hip, and let out what I can only describe as the cutest fart I've ever heard. It was like hearing a unicorn neigh. She giggled and left. Story 4. This one needs some backstory, but it's worth it. My grandparents were a very prim and proper couple, Canadian, but with old English heritage, and they clung tightly to that culture. During World War II, my grandfather was a spy in South America, working counterintelligence against the Nazis. That detail becomes important shortly. A few years back, a couple of years after Grandpa passed away, I got a Christmas card from my grandmother in a manila envelope. Along with a typewritten letter, she often sent photos or newspaper clippings she thought were interesting. After reading through the card and extras, I checked the envelope to make sure it was empty. In the bottom corner, stuck to a seam, was a small piece of yellow paper about the size of an index card. Curious, I pulled it out. It was a piece of paper craft. Someone had cut out black film paper into silhouettes and pasted them onto the card as art. When I realized what it was, my jaw hit the floor. My parents even asked what was wrong. Then they saw it too. In my hands was a silhouette picture of a very well-endowed Winston Churchill, complete with cigar and bowler hat, hate-fucking a distressed-looking Adolf Hitler. I was stunned. My brain basically shut down and rebooted in safe mode. I couldn't process what I was seeing. My grandmother, being quite prudish, would never have willingly sent this to anyone, let alone her teenage grandson. She would have destroyed it on sight rather than keep it in her house. So how did it happen? My dad and I eventually came up with a theory. Since both Axis and Allied intelligence agents were active in South America, locals would often chat up foreigners, try to figure out which side they were on, and then sell them themed knickknacks. My grandfather had told stories about going to markets and being bombarded with GI-themed wares. We assume he was sold this postcard as a souvenir, but knowing his wife would have tossed it straight into the fire if she saw it, he hid it with his documents in a manila envelope. Decades later, my grandmother must have reused the envelope without realizing something was still tucked inside. I still have the artwork. It's an odd but unique bit of war memorabilia, though obviously not framed on the mantle. To the day she died, I never had the heart to tell my grandmother about it, because if she had realized what she'd accidentally sent me, I'm certain she would have dropped dead on the spot from sheer embarrassment. Story 5. I sing in a band, and when I first joined them, I was going through a commando phase, not wearing underwear. Tight pants were the style at the time, and during one song, I put my leg up on the wedge for the ultimate rock stance, only for my pants to split wide open right at the crotch. Everyone watching, maybe 60 to 80 people, got a full view of my downstairs mix-up. There was an audible gasp, followed quickly by laughter. I'm sure the whole thing looked absolutely ridiculous. I just laughed it off, made a joke about needing to charge more for tickets, and got the hell off stage. Luckily, I had my post-show gym shorts in my bag. I managed to sneak into a practice room, change quickly, and get back to finish the set. When I returned, it was to applause and laughter. I just smiled like an idiot and took a bow. People were actually pretty funny and cool about it, so it wasn't the worst thing in the world. Still, definitely not my favorite show. On the bright side, the merch table was way more fun than usual that night. Good times. Story 6. One of my sister's friends added me on Snapchat, and I added her back. This was like my third day of having the app, and I'd never really messed with stuff like that before. I was 18 at the time. I was sort of talking dirty with someone, and they asked for a pic. I don't even remember how, but But somehow I ended up posting a full-on dick pic to my public story instead of sending it privately. I completely freaked out because I had no idea how to delete it. I jumped on Google, searching frantically for instructions, trying to remove it before anyone saw. But before I could, one person saw it, my sister's friend. For some reason, she screenshotted it and sent it straight to my sister with a WTF is your brother doing? Easily a 10 to 10 worst social media experience. Also, my old Facebook from when I was 12 is still active no matter how many times I report it, so every girl I ever date eventually gets to see how cringe I was back then. Story 7. My best friend growing up had an older sister who was insanely attractive. Like, ridiculously so. I had a crush on her when I was younger, but as we got older, I basically became part of the family. He's essentially my brother, and his family is mine and vice versa. When they moved to another state during our freshman year of college, I was over at their house while they were packing. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from his sister's room. I went to check if everything was okay, and there it was. Spread out all over the floor were dildos, vibrators, chokers, ball gags, handcuffs, condoms, lube, photos, presumably of her and partners. Basically, if it could be used for sexual pleasure, it was either in that box or spilled out of it. We made eye contact for half a second, just long enough for me to realize exactly what I was looking at, when her mom started walking over to see what had happened. I quickly turned around and said she had just dropped a box of books, assured her everything was fine, and gently closed the door before heading back to the kitchen. Later that night, she texted me, thanking me and apologizing profusely. She was obviously mortified, but I told her not to worry, it's normal. To this day, we still occasionally joke about it, sending each other memes or random screenshots of similar stuff when we come across it. But the look of pure terror on her face in that moment was absolutely priceless. Story 8. I'd been in the swimming extracurricular all through junior high, but something happened in 8th grade that was embarrassing as hell. We had a new kid in class, we'll call him Edgar. He was pretty cool, so my friend group decided to bring him in. Turns out he was into swimming too, so he joined the extracurricular with me and my other friends. On his very first day, he was late. Coincidentally, I was also late that day. For context, the swimming area had 2 bathrooms, but neither had signs. It was just common knowledge that the girls' bathroom was on the right and the boys' was on the left. Normally, new kids figured it out because everyone would split off when it was time to change. But since he was late, the teacher and the rest of the kids were already in the middle of the session, and nobody noticed him heading into the wrong bathroom. Long story short, because of those 2 unlucky coincidences, he walked right in and saw me, but naked while I was changing. He apologized afterward, but it still stung, especially since we hung out with him a lot. I couldn't look him in the eye for weeks. Story 9. I don't even know where to start with this one. Circa the era of Fallout Boys from Under the Cork Tree, and a few years past the legal drinking age. The town I grew up in loved karaoke. Before every bar caught on, there was one spot on Sundays where everyone between 18 and 45 would gather to belt out their favorites over a few wobbly pops. When the bar closed, the lights came up, and security begged us to go home. The smokers out back would usually arrange a safe convoy of uncoordinated drunks for a calm late-night walk. On this particular night, I was the last stop. A good childhood friend of mine insisted on walking me all the way home. For the last 10 minutes, I kept trying to convince him I was fine, that he could turn back, but he refused. In my drunken brilliance, I decided he wouldn't notice if I just peed my pants as we walked down the street. I couldn't hold it any longer. But it was midsummer, I was in shorts, and there is no way to hide peeing your shorts straight onto asphalt in the middle of a well-lit street, no matter how drunk you or anyone else is. I will never live that one down. Story 10. I was 15 and working at a carpet cleaning place. It had an extremely Italian name and was run by a very old Italian family. My cousin got me the job. There was no interview, no evaluation. He just told them I was cool, and they took me on. We barely worked. We'd be there 6 to 8 hours a day, but maybe only did 4 hours of actual work. At the end of the day, they paid everyone $15 an hour in cash. One day, I came into the office later than usual because I'd forgotten my water bottle. A few guys were sitting around a table, counting a massive pile of money. Being 15 and stupid, I said something like, "Whoa, this looks like The Godfather or something." "Shut up." Nobody laughed. Nobody gave me the just kidding treatment you'd expect when you're 15 and a grown man shuts you down in front of others. I never went back after that. My hometown was known as a trafficking spot between the New York and Chicago mob, and I'd already heard rumors about that place since my cousin started working there. Let's just say there weren't nearly enough carpets in town to justify that much cash. Story 11. I was at work dealing with whatever the male equivalent of a Karen is. We'll call him Richard, since he was being a dick. He wanted a full refund on an expensive pair of glasses that were A, 3 years old, the warranty was 1 year, and B, broken by him. Warranty wouldn't cover accidental damage anyway. He refused to take no for an answer and demanded to see the manager. Now, I knew damn well the manager wasn't in and told him as much. But because I didn't go check first, he was convinced I was lying and insisted I go at least verify. So I obliged. On the short walk to the manager's office, I hatched a cunning plan. The plan was simple. If there was someone, anyone, in the office, I'd explain the situation and get them to pretend to be the manager and professionally tell him to get lost. If there wasn't anyone in there, I'd just pretend to have a conversation with an imaginary manager and then come back to tell him the manager says no. Of course, the office was empty. So there I was, standing in front of an empty chair, having a fake conversation with a ghost. Just one problem. I hadn't realized the guy had followed me into the office and was watching me talk to thin air. I don't have many hell, take me, I'm ready moments in life, but this was absolutely one of them. In my deep embarrassment, my defense was offense. I spun around, pointed at the empty chair, and snapped, "Now do you believe me?" The guy came back the next day and told the whole story to the actual manager, who, of course, gave him the refund as a goodwill gesture. Because if there's one thing worse than dealing with shitty Karens and Richards in retail, it's having a spineless manager who won't back their staff. Story 12. When I was younger, the first time I ever drank, I chugged an entire fifth of vodka. Before I passed out, I peed on the ground in front of everyone, then collapsed right next to a fire. My shoe actually melted to my foot. To make it worse, I started yelling that I wanted to sleep with my best friend's brother, so she got mad and left me there. I was surrounded by a bunch of drunk guys who thought it would be funny to pick me up and swing me back and forth over the fire. Eventually, my friend's brother came down to get me. He picked me up over his shoulder to carry me up the hill, but he was also drunk and kept dropping me, so I just kept rolling back down. The next morning, a bunch of neighborhood kids came inside and found me with one shoe melted to my skin, dirt all over me, twigs stuck in my hair, blood on my face, and a half-eaten grilled cheese tangled in my hair. I was humiliated. Honestly, I realized I was more embarrassed by the way people treated me than by what I had done. To this day, people still bring it up, and I still have scars from that night. Another time, while I was having sex, the guy grabbed my throat while I was giving him head, then pinched my nose shut. When he let go, snot flew everywhere, and he used it as lube. I busted out laughing, but he got mad. That one was embarrassing too, but at least no one else saw it. Story 13. Many years ago, my boyfriend at the time still lived at home with his parents. They had the downstairs, and he had the upstairs. The family decided to get a puppy. This little guy was absolutely adorable, but he was also pure chaos. He got into everything, chewed up furniture, peed all over the place, just total puppy mayhem. One afternoon, my boyfriend and I came home. As we walked in the door, we heard shrieking, growling, and this weird humming noise. We went into the kitchen and found his mom half up on the counter, screaming at the top of her lungs, "I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is." Meanwhile, the puppy was growling and jumping up at her, with our big, purple, vibrating dildo in his mouth. The thing I still wonder about isn't how the puppy managed to get hold of the dildo, or how long that little pantomime had been going on before we arrived, but why she kept so loudly insisting that she didn't know what it was, and who exactly she thought she was fooling. Needless to say, after that, we never had the "whose place should we stay at" debate again. Story 14. So my 23 years girl and my brother 22 years and I were living with our parents at the time. His bedroom was downstairs, more cut off from the rest of the house, while mine was upstairs. He spent most of his time down there. The only reason anyone else went to the basement was to let the dogs out or do laundry. My brother knew this. One night, he brought a Tinder date over to our parents' house. I told him that was messed up. I was doing laundry around midnight or 1 a.m. on my day off. I work night shifts, so I'm used to being up late and like to keep my routine. My brother knew this and knew I'd be awake. So I went downstairs to get my laundry. As I was leaving the basement, arms full of clothes, I ran straight into his Tinder date, completely naked. Right in front of me. I just blurted out, "Jesus Christ, sorry, dude," while she panicked and scrambled. A few minutes later, my brother texted me, "Haha, sorry." I shot back, "You know I'm up, so why the hell is she walking naked around the house?" Seriously, who does that? Who walks around but naked in someone else's home knowing there are other people around? Story 15. My friends and I were all pretty good at Photoshop and editing back in high school, and we'd get into these ridiculous Photoshop wars, editing each other into all sorts of things. One time, a mate posted a picture of me that ended up getting turned into a meme by some random on 4chan. So, naturally, I retaliated by editing him and another friend into gay porn. Nothing super graphic, but definitely suggestive enough that you knew what was going on. One night, I was on Skype while scrolling through gay porn, trying to find something usable but not too explicit for the edit. I joked to my mate, "Man, it'd be really awkward if my dad walked in right now, haha." I turned around, and there he was, just standing there, staring at me. I scrambled to explain, but he cut me off and said, "Nah, it's all right, mate." Eventually, I begged him to please stop being so considerate and just hush for a second. I explained the situation, and he just shrugged, went, all right, and walked away. Years later, my mom and I were talking about the most awkward moments in our lives, and I brought it up. Turns out, he never told her. Just in case I actually was gay, he left it up to me to share whenever I wanted. Either that, or he was just scared. I like to think it was the first. Nothing wrong with being gay, of course, but man, for teenage me, that was so awkward. Story 16. Back in the late 90s, a friend's dad used to work late afternoons. It wasn't unusual for us to be hanging out at their house while he took these ridiculously long showers before work. One day, he was running super late, jumped out of the shower, and rushed out the door. Long story short, he left a massive dildo suction cup to the shower wall. His kid grabbed a towel, popped it off the wall, and tossed it onto his dad's bed. Seconds later, the dad came bursting back in, saying something about forgetting his wallet and "don't go in the bathroom." But he figured it out immediately when he didn't see it there. His kid just said, "It's on your bed, Dad." Sure enough, Dad shuffled to the bedroom. We heard a dresser drawer close, and then he left for work. Honestly, nobody made a huge deal about it. Sure, there were a few jokes here and there, but not as much as you'd expect. Personally, I didn't care if the guy enjoyed a little but fun. I just thought maybe it would have been smarter to schedule those activities for a time when the house wasn't full of people. Story 17. More of a "you weren't supposed to hear that" story. A few years back, my dad and I went to a small benefit show raising funds to help cover medical costs for a guitarist we knew who had suffered a stroke. He played with a bunch of B and C-list 80s hard rock bands and had tons of friends, so the lineup was packed, if you were into hair metal. We paid a little extra for the meet and greet that was happening before the show at a separate bar attached to the venue. Turns out, we were the only regular people who showed up. Everyone else was one of the musicians playing that night. So we basically got to be flies on the wall while they all started shit-talking each other. One line I'll never forget. Someone asked, "Hey man, I heard so-and-so is gonna be sitting in tonight." The other guy goes, "Oh, that asshole? Nah man, that guy's such a flaky cokehead, he didn't bother showing up to any rehearsals." I worked with him on another project, and I have no idea how he keeps his steady gig with insert name of literally one of the biggest artists of all time. Then he suddenly noticed me and my dad standing there, froze, and said, "Oh shit, you guys didn't hear that, right?" Story 18. Let me give some context. I'm the only one in my whole family who likes anime. None of them want to watch it, and some outright despise it. On top of that, my friends were into hentai, I wasn't. And we had a WhatsApp group chat where they'd spam like 800 messages a day. I rarely checked it, and I didn't realize I could stop the photos they sent from automatically saving into my gallery. One day, I was telling my older sister about one of my friends, and I needed to show her a text he'd sent. She then wanted to check something else on my phone. I let her, since I didn't want to look like I was hiding anything, and I thought I'd already cleaned out all the sins my friends had sent me. But no. She came across an NSFW pic of 02. Thank God she didn't go into the group chat or my gallery, because that would have been 1,000 times worse. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.